Well, as you can see, quite heightened tension between the US and Iran. And it's a great pleasure to welcome to the Hard Shoulder studio here Dr. Masood Aslami, the Iranian Ambassador to Ireland. Thank you for joining us on the show. What is your reaction to those comments from President Trump?
My first reaction would be that he is not in a position to designate anybody in the world as a terrorist or otherwise. These are political accusations and designations which has no basis in international law or any international norm of conduct.
Well, we have had people like Tim Marshall of Sky News, formerly, on this programme last week, giving us sort of analysis of these international affairs. And what they say is that General Soleimani was responsible for dealing with proxy wars in relation to the Middle East, right across that, in relation to Shia militia in Iraq, in relation to what's happening and been happening in Syria. Do you deny Iranian involvement and the involvement of Soleimani in those militias?
There is no doubt that there is a massive campaign of disinformation in this context. And General Soleimani's performance in fighting steadfastly against terrorism, particularly against Daesh and Al-Qaeda in our region, is well on the record. Even his foes have acknowledged the fact that he dedicated his life and he's dedicated his efforts all to fight against Daesh. And this is recognized by the people in the ground. This is recognized by the government of Iraq and by the authorities in Iraq who have invited, actually, in Kurdistan of Iraq, the authorities are very well aware and they acknowledge the fact that General Soleimani was the first person to be invited and to put his efforts in organizing a popular movement against the atrocities which was carried out by Daesh at those times. So we have to take into account that there is a process of demonization in order to cover up for this cruel assassination of a hero who was glorified by his people, by not only by people of Iran but also by the people of Iraq and so many other countries. So there is a campaign of disinformation and distortion to provide a sort of justification for this act of terrorism, which has no precedent in international affairs.
And is it disinformation if we look at the attack on Saudi Arabian oil facilities some months ago? Was there any Iranian involvement in that?
Of course not. We are living in a world that every claim should be substantiated. After these oil attacks, it took Secretary Pompeo a couple of minutes to come out and claim that this has been carried out by Iran. But ever since, he and his associates had enough time to come up with iota of evidence to prove his claims. He already attacked and he started to foment this kind of fervent antagonism against Iran. But he has yet to provide any sort of evidence. The same story we have in this assassination case. They claim consistently that they have evidence for imminent threat coming from martyr Soleimani, but they have not been able to provide any sort of evidence even for the U.S. Congress, let alone for the rest of the world.
And what is the situation now in relation to Iran developing a nuclear weapon? Is it an ambition of the Iranian government to develop it? We had the agreement in 2015. What is the state? The US unilaterally withdrew from that after Trump replaced Obama. what is your side of that story insofar as is it your ambition to develop a nuclear weapon or not?
The authorities in Iran have stressed and announced time and again that in principle Iran is against any kind of weapons of mass destruction. Iran has not been involved in producing weapons of mass destruction, is not and will not attempt to develop such a weapon.
But there's no uranium enrichment activity.
Of course there is, but that is entirely for peaceful purposes. A project which has been verified time and again, consistently, and with no other identical precedent in the world, to be under the inspection of the IAEI,
Yes,
the Atomic Agency,
Yes.
proving that Iran has never endeavored to achieve a weapon.
So you see, some people would say that what the Iranian authorities and what you want to achieve is the lifting of sanctions. But the problem is that the Americans in particular just don't trust the Iranians to keep their word.
It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of contradictory mentality that Trump administration is putting forward. They come with the bullying mentality to, that there's a saying in American saying that if the only instrument you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything would look like to you as a nail. So they want to bully others, anybody who challenge them, to either kill them or sanction them unless they submit and they become subordinate and submissive to their will. Iran has done nothing in terms of developing a nuclear weapon or otherwise against international law, against the Charter of the United Nations, against the principled diplomacy to be entitled to be sanctioned so cruelly by unilaterally by the United States. The unilateral sanctions has no credibility, no justification, no legality in international community. And these are unilateral and unjustified sanctions, depriving millions of people, including elderly and children, from having access to the medicine that they need.
Is it just Trump? Insofar as if you listen to Tel Aviv, if you listen to the Saudi authorities, they all say that, across a spectrum of the Middle East, that Iran is pursuing a proxy series of wars, supporting Shia against Sunni in Iraq, supporting Hezbollah, and so on. It is irreconcilable what you're saying with what those, you can call them US allies, are saying. I mean, for people in Ireland, it's not a matter of opinion. There's an absolute conflict on the factual situation here. How do you respond to that?
I would say that US and its allies are not credible sources of information for the people of Ireland.
Or Tel Aviv, or Israeli, or Saudi?
Or for the entire world. We need to be objective in terms of choosing our sources of information. These are biased, definitely, no credible at all. You see that the machine of the producing machine of allegations and justification for keeping the presence of U.S. armed forces in the region is so strong that they need some sort of justification. Just look at the amount of billions of dollars of which Saudi Arabia, for example, is spending on weaponry. Is that for the security of the region? Is that for the stability of the region? Has it produced anything to add to the education, to prosperity of the people of the region? All we have as an outcome of this military weaponry pouring in our region is the destruction and devastation
Okay.
for the people.
Two specific things I want to
Let me add another point here that, you're talking about Saudi Arabia and United States as allies, trying to just justify each other. And we have the record of killing Jamal Khashoggi, which was the horrendous crime committed inside the diplomatic properties, and it was just covered up by the United States.
Okay, two specific things I need to ask you about. There was some confusion about whether last night's 20-odd missiles was the sum total of the retaliation for the assassination of Soleimani, or whether there will be more reprisals. What's the position about that?
I would say it depends on the measures that the United States will take in responding to this initiative and these measures. Iran has made it absolutely clear that it is not seeking any armed conflict in the region. Iran has been consistent to call for de-escalation, and this is, of course, we have committed to respond proportionately to the attack and to the crime which has been committed by the United States inside the soil of Iraq. But nevertheless, this is an indication and beginning of that process.
So Trump is claiming if there's no further retaliation, this is a victory for him. How do you respond to that?
Trump is very is ready to claim victory for everything, and he's trying to project himself as an unparalleled person on the entire world.
The final thing I need to ask you is, at the same time as the missiles were launched, this Ukrainian plane went down. What do you know of the cause of that crash?
It is under investigation. I would say that there is no indication that these are linked. Absolutely not. But I cannot say anything unless I have the confirmation of the investigation to come out.
But do you believe it was an engine failure, a plane technical failure, rather than a terrorist incident?
I have no information to speculate on that.
All right. We look forward to talking to you again, and hopefully these tensions will ease. My thanks to the Iranian Ambassador to Ireland, Dr. Masood Eslami, for joining us here on The Hard Shoulder.